Hey y'all, so in the last video I talked about why it's crucial to plan out your first 100, 200 inputs before an acquisition, and in today's video I want to focus specifically on the transition process, really lasering in on the pre-close period. So I'm going to walk you through my basic checklist for the things that I like to accomplish in both the pre-LOI and post-LOI, but pre-close phases of the acquisition process. So let me just jump into my screen here and we'll get started. So these are the basic things that I like to accomplish in the pre-close period. Now keep in mind, every single situation is different. This is not an exhaustive list of everything that you need to tackle, but should keep you nice and organized and really get in front of a lot of the critical items that need to happen during these couple of phases of the acquisition process, both pre-LOI and post-LOI and pre-close. So obviously, right off the bat, you want to make sure that you are doing a full due diligence on the asset or assets that you are acquiring. Obviously, this encompasses pretty much all of my other videos on the channel, so give those a look. If you don't have a specific SOP that you follow for due diligence, and then outside of that, it's really doing a lot of the other items that I've mentioned around the initial data and information transfer from the seller and asking them the critical questions that you need answers to in order to get an offer and an LOI in front of them. I cover that in a previous video as well about what to ask for from the seller. So team resourcing projections, I really like to do this pre-LOI because it gives you a general sense of how many resources do you need to dedicate to this acquisition in order to execute on the plan that you've put in front of the leadership team and the rest of the decision makers within your organization in order to realize the investment thesis or the forecast for the acquired business. Now, this doesn't need to involve all the nitty-gritty details around the every single aspect of the transition process for every single employee that you're bringing over or who's in what roles on the acquired business once you do bring it over, but having a general sense of how big the team is going to be, what types of roles you need, and then a general sense of who and what roles you want to bring over from the acquired business is going to give you, again, just a good sense of how much cost and investment needs to go into this business and site that you're acquiring and help just prep for team planning. So you don't need to get into employment contracts and things like that at this stage, but having that general sense is going to give you a lot of confidence going into the post-LOI phase. Valuation and offer planning also happens pre-LOI, so obviously that's going to be part of the letter of intent is what you planned to give the seller in terms of an offer. And so making sure that you are working with your corporate development team, your finance team, and all the rest of your decision makers to come to a valuation or offer on the business and site that you're acquiring. Now, the LOI stage is going to be different for every single company. I've worked in companies where the LOI is basically as good as a closed offer and most of the details are already worked out. And then I've been in situations where an LOI is actually considered pretty early in the process and there's still a lot of groundwork to cover post-LOI. So really just get on the same page with the rest of your teammates around where your comfort level is and where the LOI typically sits within your M&A process. And then post-LOI and pre-close, obviously signed LOI is the line of demarcation here. But this is the point where you want to get access to all of their financial statements if you don't have access already. I touched on this in my previous video on what to ask the seller for, but post-LOI is really where you get super serious and get really raw data file access for everything under the sun when it comes to their business in the closing period. First-party data access as well, I've covered that previously, and CMS access if appropriate. Now, in some cases, that may not that may not be possible because there could be certain privacy concerns or just communication concerns with the amount of people who know about the potential acquisition on the acquiring business or the acquired business. So obviously, like I said earlier, every single situation is different, but at this point you're also doing your final due diligence as well. Legal contracts and planning are obviously a big part of the post-LOI and pre-close process, and redlining back and forth a ton of different documents and offer letters to make sure that y'all get on the same page between buyer and seller and get everything signed. Obviously, that's not my forte, but should be part of your operational documents and have owners and stakeholders involved with it so you can track progress against those milestones throughout the acquisition process. And then this is also where you get into that deeper team resource planning. So doing things that go beyond just overall team modeling and the number of people that you need within certain functions. This gets down to things like employment contracts. Who are the specific people that you're going to bring over from the acquired business? Who for internally within your organization are you going to tap to come and run the business that you are acquiring? These are all the types of decisions that need to go into team resource planning. I'm going to have a bunch more videos on this topic in particular and really how to think about that entire transition and planning process for new acquisitions. Inputs roadmap. So like I talked about again in my previous video on inputs planning, you want to create specific inputs, plans, and checklists for your 30, 60, and 90-day goals, as well as 3 to 6 month range and 6 to 12 month range. And if you want to go beyond that, you certainly can, or create different intervals. This is really just what works for me. But some examples of those could be things like calendars, like your editorial calendar, your social media calendar, your video production calendar, if those things are applicable. But this can really be anything under the sun that comes from your due diligence around content, potential link building that needs to go into the site, UX improvements, monetization improvements, really anything to improve the business. And then last but certainly not least is securing funding and getting all of the financial details squared away. So this is obviously handled by your finance team within the organization, but big part of the pre-close process, obviously, and one that should be part of your operational documents to make sure everybody's on the same page and tracking towards that final close date. So I'll have some separate videos on some of the things that I look out for on the day of close as well as post-close for the acquisition process. And until then, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.